Close your eyes and picture this life. Perfect body, perfect career, perfect marriage, perfect family, zero problems. Does that sound good? Watch social media, listen to popular songs, or watch TV, and they all agree. The ultimate pursuit is the pursuit of perfection. Doctors, beauty consultants, TV preachers, commercial spokespersons, actors, writers, heck, your parents' friends are all telling you that neither you nor the life you live is good enough. Is that true? Is it fair? Perfection sounds good, but is it necessary or even wise? While we're chasing all that perfection, something dangerous is happening. An idea gets nurtured, one that sounds good on the outside, but get to the heart of it and we discover that it is filled with poison. We begin to believe that if life were just perfect enough, we would finally be okay. But that line of thinking, that way of believing, can quickly become a weight around our necks and a stone in our chest where our heart belongs. The danger of the pursuit of perfection is that it can actually destroy the very things that make life meaningful. Ask yourself this question: what if the failures, the falls, the mishaps, the disappointments, and the painful blows life deals us are absolutely essential to make life full and meaningful? Perfection sounds great in theory, but the reality is that perfection is a sterile place where nothing grows. I have some experience with that. I grew up on my family's ranch. Every year, our cows would have calves that eventually ended up at the stock market in the neighboring town of Buffalo, Texas. But before we ever loaded them into trailers, we placed them in 2 of 3 large holding pens and fed them heavily to fatten them up for market. For weeks on end, those calves did 3 things: eat, grow, and of course, leave behind an impressive amount of mess. As a kid, I hated walking through those pens in my rubber boots, especially after a rain. The ground turned into a thick, muddy mixture that squished under every step, and there was no avoiding it. You just pushed through and hoped your boots didn't get stuck. But something interesting happened in the one pen we weren't using that season. That pen became our garden. All the manure from the previous year had been left to dry and mix into the soil. And in that manure-rich dirt, we grew the biggest vegetables you've ever seen. Rows of purple hull peas, massive cabbages, sweet cantaloupes. Everything grew there, everything flourished. It might sound a little unpleasant, but that waste, left there from the year before, had turned into soil so rich that plant life practically exploded out of it. What once made a mess became nourishment. What nobody wanted to walk through became exactly what the garden needed. That lesson stuck with me. Sometimes life does its worst. Sometimes it feels like everything just piles on. But if you're patient, if you don't run from it or try to pretend it didn't happen, there may come a day when you realize that the very place where life knocked you down has become the soil for something good. Pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of a harvest. Pain is a lot like poop. It's no fun to endure, but it leaves behind a gift if we are willing to receive it. Think about it. If everything worked out exactly the way you planned, if every prayer was answered instantly, and every relationship was silky smooth, and every dream came without true resistance, then you would never develop patience or learn humility or discover resilience. Pain is the soil where growth happens. Perfection has no soil. A life without friction produces shallow roots. That's why comfort alone doesn't mature us. We don't grow when everything is easy. We grow, we get better when there is a cost involved. Otherwise, you're just frozen in place and nothing changes. We tend to treat failure like a curse, like a sentence for the crime of not measuring up. Actual proof that something is wrong with us. But failure is not a courtroom, it's a classroom. It strips away illusion, it reveals what matters, exposes false confidence, humbles pride, and if seen correctly, it redirects purpose. What do I mean by that? Think about this. Most of what you know about strength comes from weakness. The compassion that you learned came from suffering, and the wisdom you possess came from making mistakes. A perfect life would rob you of those lessons. You would get answers, but no understanding, and answers without understanding make us arrogant. Abraham Lincoln is revered by many Americans today. History remembers him as the man whose leadership preserved the Union and altered the moral direction of a nation. But what history often smooths over is just how familiar Lincoln was with failure. Long before he became president, Lincoln failed in business, twice. He lost elections repeatedly. He was defeated in his bids for the state legislature, Congress, and the U.S. Senate. He buried 2 children and wrestled deeply with depression. At several points in his life, by any modern definition, he looked like a man who simply could not get ahead. But Lincoln didn't allow those failures to define him or destroy him. Instead, each setback refined him. Each loss stripped away ego. Each defeat taught patience, restraint, and empathy. Failure did not crush his spirit, it tempered it. Over time, disappointment carved into him a humility that power alone never could have produced. By the time the nation reached its darkest hour, Lincoln was not a man forged by success, but by survival. His failures had trained him to endure criticism, absorb loss, listen deeply, and lead without illusion. The very experiences that once seemed like proof of inadequacy became the preparation that made him strong enough to hold a fractured nation together. Failure did not disqualify him, it qualified him. Suffering produces brokenness, and while it may sound counterintuitive, brokenness can and often does create the world's most beautiful people, and consequently, some of the world's greatest beauty. Look into the eyes of a person who has known true suffering and you see something pretty rare. You see a person who listens differently and speaks gently. They don't rush pain or mock struggle. Brokenness creates empathy, and empathy is one of the rarest forms of beauty in the world. A perfect life might make you efficient, but it would also make you shallow. People who have walked through the most darkness often carry the most light. They know how fragile life is, how quickly things change. They understand how precious connection really is, and they perceive the profound truth that knowledge comes not from perfection, but from loss. We need to understand that it is struggle that gives life its meaning. If everything came easily, then nothing would feel valuable. We cherish what we had to fight for, cling tighter to the treasure that almost slipped away, and protect the things that survived hardship. Meaning is born in resistance. That's why stories without conflict feel empty and victories without struggle feel hollow. A life without struggle is boring, predictable, flat, and uninspiring. Struggle sharpens our desires and teaches us the things that we are willing to endure for. It shows us what we truly love and forces us to choose the things that matter the most to us. Without struggle, life loses its edge. When you see an older couple still deeply in love after many decades of marriage, it might seem like their journey has been all rainbows and unicorns. But talk to someone who has been in such a marriage, and they can relate to you the struggle, the tears, the setbacks, and mistakes, and yet, counterintuitively, those are the very things that have made their marriage so blessed. As a teacher, I have personally found that the greatest satisfaction comes when a singularly difficult student overcomes obstacles to show real growth. The student that causes you to lose the most sleep is the one that you remember with the greatest satisfaction years later. Have you ever met someone who had life handed to them on a silver spoon? They're not usually fun to be around. A word that often comes to mind with such people is ungrateful. The wonderful things they have been given don't seem to mean much. See, gratitude thrives on contrast. You appreciate warmth because you've been cold. You enjoy rest because you've known exhaustion. You appreciate joy because you have known sorrow. A perfect life would numb gratitude. If everything were good or easy all the time, then nothing would feel special. Sunsets would be ordinary, kindness would be expected, love would be taken for granted. But because life is imperfect, because moments are fragile, and because nothing is guaranteed, we learn to say, thank you. We will do most anything to avoid pain, but pain is not without value. It's like an all-seeing light that is shown deep inside of ourselves. When life breaks, what we really believe is exposed. Comfort hides what we truly believe. It camouflages our faith. Pain, on the other hand, shows us what we really believe. Pain has a way of stripping everything else away. There was a man named Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. In that place, everything that could be taken from a human being was taken. Freedom, dignity, identity. Even the manuscript of a book he had spent years writing was torn from his hands and destroyed. His parents were murdered. His brother was killed. His wife, pregnant at the time, did not survive. If anyone had reason to believe that life was meaningless, it was him. But what Frankl noticed in the camps was something astonishing. Under the same brutality, the same starvation, the same hopeless conditions, people responded in radically different ways. Some became cruel, desperate, and hardened. Others, somehow, became compassionate. They shared their last crust of bread. They whispered encouragement. They chose kindness in a place designed to erase it. Frankel realized that the people who survived were not necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who found meaning. Some lived for the hope of seeing a loved one again. Others lived simply to help someone else survive one more day. Later, Frankel wrote that everything can be taken from a person except one thing: the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. Think about that. In one of the darkest chapters of human history, where life was anything but perfect, meaning didn't disappear, it became essential. Pain didn't erase belief, it revealed it. A perfect life would never force us to ask questions that deep. It would never strip us down far enough to find out what really matters. But broken seasons do. They take away the illusions, silence the distractions, and leave us face to face with what we truly believe. When things fall apart, we discover what or who we are really trusting. Our abilities, our plans, other people, God. In a perfect life, we would never be forced to confront these all too essential questions. But broken seasons strip away our performance, silence distractions, and leave us with what is real. And sometimes that real is a faith that is deeper and truer than we realized. Like pain, imperfection reveals our deeply flawed humanity. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need help. And if we didn't need help, we wouldn't need community. Imperfection creates connection. We bond through shared wounds. We heal through honesty, and we grow through mutual dependence. Needing others is not weakness, it's our human design. A perfect life would isolate us, but an imperfect life invites us to love one another deeply. It's a very human thing to want to avoid pain and to hide our imperfection, and we're very good at it. Perfection promises control. If we didn't have all these problems and flaws, our worlds wouldn't spin out of control and we would finally be happy. But control is an illusion. Life is unpredictable, people are complex, and love is risky. Trying to control everything leads to anxiety, not peace. Learn to own your imperfection, and it will teach you surrender. Surrender means we can loosen our grip, accept uncertainty, and trust the world beyond what we can manage or control. Peace doesn't come from controlling life, it comes from releasing it. Does imperfection have a meaning beyond just our own lives, failings, and struggles? Look around at the world. The most beautiful things in the world are not flawless. Imagine a face weathered with age and hands scarred with hard work, or a piece of cracked pottery or dish that belonged to a grandparent or ancestor. Some of the most beautiful pieces of art are cracked or damaged. Beauty lies in imperfection because true beauty tells a story. Scars mean survival. Wrinkles mean laughter and sorrow. Cracks means that something has been carried and dropped, but then lovingly restored. A perfect life would have no story. We often grouse about and kick against the limitations that we perceive to be our adversaries, but is that fair? To bear a limitation means that we also carry the gifts that it brings to us. Limits force us to be creative. If we can't go around or over a mountain, then we must devise ways to get to its other side. Limits mean that we must find a deeper focus within ourselves. We must bring to bear the full power of our brains and wills to surmount problems that refuse to be moved aside easily. Limits teach us humility. We can't have everything we want. There isn't room for every flavor of ice cream in the freezer or every box of cereal in the pantry. You don't get everything you want, you can't do everything you want, and you won't be everything you wish. And that's okay. Your limits give your life shape. A perfect world would be endless but meaningless. Boundaries give life direction. Stubbornly, illogically, we still chase perfection. If I could only win the lottery, I wouldn't have to worry about money and life would be perfect. But money doesn't fix every problem, and it certainly can't buy happiness. We are addicted to the idea that perfection can shield us from pain or protect us from rejection. We are terrified of being rejected, of failing, or of simply being seen for who we really are. Perfection is a mask, and masks isolate us. The beauty of admitting our own imperfection is that it allows us to stop pretending that everything's okay and that we still don't have it all together. Best of all, when we make that admission, we give permission to others to do the same thing, and that's where healing begins. So how can we define as good a life that is filled with imperfection? A good life isn't painless. A good life is honest. It's not flawless, but it can still be faithful. It may not always be happy, but it will be filled with meaning. It contains both tears and laughter, loss and love, unanswered questions and faith, and somehow all of it belongs. There is freedom in accepting life along with all of its imperfection. When we can finally stop expecting and/or demanding perfection from life, we can stop demanding it from ourselves and stop demanding it from others. We breathe easier, forgive quicker, sleep better, and rest easier. We have come to that blessed place where we allow ourselves the luxury of being unfinished. We find that we can slow down, we get to fail forward, as opposed to be knocked on our asses, and best of all, we get to heal in stages and learn piecemeal. Life isn't a performance, it's a journey. Life isn't perfect, nor should it be. The imperfection that we see as a thorn or a blister or a failing of life is an amazing gift. Without imperfection, there would be no growth. Without imperfection, compassion would be silenced and gratitude would be killed. Life would lose its meaning and most of its flavor. Imperfection is not a flaw in the design, it is the design.